Okay, so we're pretty much not. Particularly bad if you're not very tall. Margetson would have no problem. This is a social inclusion issue. I don't know if we consider So we'll call to order. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting. And if you're joining us from home via the YouTube, my name is Kate McNaughton, and I'm the chair tonight. Our chair and our vice chair are in far reaches of the planet, or at least a couple 100 kilometers away. So the chair has asked me to step in as chair tonight, so I'm very honored to be sitting in the big chair. We've got a relatively long agenda, so but I'll just take a second to acknowledge where we are and that we're in beautiful Prince Edward County, that has been the traditional home of the Huron-Wendat and the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee people for millennia, and I don't think we should go ahead with an accessibility meeting without acknowledging that. So, and perhaps we can keep it in our hearts as we go through our agenda tonight and keep that in our minds from an accessibility standpoint too, or an inclusion standpoint. So, can I get someone to move the confirmation of the agenda? Sarah, and I'm gonna pick on people if it's okay, just because we're such a small group tonight, and I'm going to pick on Roy to second that. Would you second the confirmation of the agenda? Thanks. So all in favor? Okay, that passes, so we get to talk about the things on the agenda tonight. Does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest that they need to share with us? Nope, I see no hands, so that's a good sign. And minutes of the previous meetings, can someone put this on the floor for me? Anyone at home or anyone here or anyone at a hotel at a conference? Thank you, Carolyn, seconded by Councillor Pinnell. Carolyn beat you to it, Irene. Okay. Thank you for your willingness. So all in favor? Thank you. Does anyone have any announcements that they would like to share? So we don't usually do much with announcements, but if anyone wants to share anything, you can. Councillor Pinnell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to tell everyone that this Friday night is the world famous it's the Hollow Out Parade held at Bloomfield. And on the 3rd of December, we have 2 more parades. one in Picton at 1 o'clock, one in Conscon at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Dueling parades, but they're both amazing. So, but next year we're going to make sure that they're scheduled so that everyone can go to both of them because they're both amazing. So yes, come out to the parades and the Bloomfield Night Parade, right? That's Friday night. I forgot to put it on my calendar. It's the most beautiful parade. So thank you, Roy. Deputations, we have a deputation tonight from the Wellington Community Association to talk about a public bench initiative. So I would like to welcome our presenters to the floor, and you have 10 minutes to speak, and can you please start by introducing yourselves?
Good evening, and thank you very much for listening to our deputation. So the Wellington Community Association held a vision for our village on April the 15th, 2023. It had great attendance, and it was a very successful community engagement. One of the strong messages we received from the attendees was that they wanted more benches on the main street of Wellington. Often people would walk from one end to another or carry groceries, and it's a long walk if there are no benches to rest on. So we listened, and the Wellington Bench Project represents the first project for the Wellington Beautification Committee. The Wellington Community Association has 4 committees, and one of them is the Beautification Committee. And Lisa Reddick, my amazing team member, and I are leading the Beautification Committee. We spoke to Elspeth Donville from the Wellington Heritage Museum, who kindly granted us permission to use their heritage garden bench design for our Wellington bench. These are the benches you can see in the museum garden. They are a pale blue color, and they are based on the historic Wellington benches that appeared in many old family farms and around Wellington. So each one of these benches that we are making will be designed by a county artist to depict the spirit of the village. We've adapted the original design to meet the AODA requirements. We then met with Lisa Lindsay, the Director of Recreation and Community Services, who provided us with really invaluable information, including the requirements for AODA, and gave us your committee's contact information. Richard Lightfoot of the county has provided us with the name of the precast concrete company, AB Casting Company, that is used by the county for their bench installations, and we've been in contact with them and will be using them for our bench bases as well. Prior to installation, Richard Lightfoot will meet us at each location to confirm the exact setbacks required, and Lisa Lindsay will provide us with the locates for each location. We've met with several furniture makers and woodworkers and decided on the most professional fit. The construction will be 100% AODA compliant. We've been fortunate enough to be granted permission at 2 separate locations, neither of which are on municipal property, for spring of 2024 installations. We hope to install 5 or 6 benches in total over the next few years. We're just starting with 2. Each bench will have an inlaid plaque acknowledging the heritage design of the bench, the artist's name, and the sponsor's information. We currently have a call to all artists in PEC, in the media, and on social media platforms for the artists to submit their designs, which are to be received by the 15th of December. And to date, we've got 12. After consultation with local experts and various companies, the applied finishes will be applied with a strong, long-lasting coating to ensure longevity and durability. We are so pleased how well this project has been received, both within the village of Wellington and by the community. Thanks to community enthusiasm, community assistance, and strong community financial support, we are able to install 2 benches rather than the initially planned single bench, and we're very excited about that. So we did bring a mock-up with us. Oh, and the image of the bench. Mock-up of the side of the bench. Adapted it by making the back is
Been rained twice. Hello? Well. I keep saying I'm going to call.
Sorry. The back is deeper and the seat is longer, which are all the requirements from the accessibility form that we received from Lisa Lindsay. And it will be made of, it's made of spruce, which will be first of all covered with shellac, then with 2 coats of primer. This is a coat of primer right now. And then the artist will get it when it's just primed, all over primed. They will paint the whole design completely all over it. And then we will completely cover the whole bench, top, bottom, sides, back, front, upside down, whatever, in spa varnish.
We got back phone call. But she said.
So if someone's talking at home, we can hear you. And can you just mute your mic if you're chatting? Thanks.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, I totally like the style in that. And the other thing I'm curious on is,
Okay. Breast cancer. Yeah. And it just.
Again, can you mute your mic if you're talking? Thanks.
want me to go ahead? I really like the design. The other thing I'm wondering about, I can think of a lot of people in Wellington that have since passed on. I think this would be a wonderful idea. Perhaps you may get a family wanting to sponsor the whole thing.
Actually, yes, we are going to, we have sponsorship for these first 2 benches, but now in the future we are going to put it out as a memorial bench so that the plaque at the back will say that it's a heritage bench from the Wellington Museum. It'll have the artist's name and it will have in memory of. So we can absolutely do exactly that.
And I'm certain you could get lots of publicity from your local newspaper.
Yes, we hope so too. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to ask a question or make a comment to the speakers?
I would. Will there be any sidewalks going to the benches so handicapped people can get to the bench?
Yes, it will be on a precast concrete slab. And if there is any space between the sidewalk and the setback that is required, it will be concreted over so that it will be accessible, yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Irene, Carolyn, Sarah, everyone good?
Yeah, I just had,
Yeah?
I have a comment, Kate, if you can hear me.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to thank this wonderful Wellington group for what a fabulous project. And to have you proactively think about accessibility, I'll tell you, it's really special because a lot of people don't turn their mind to these things, and it's constantly trying to, after the fact, to look at it and say, well, if only this or that. But it's just so wonderful that you're doing this. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And actually, it was Lisa Lindsay who said to us when we approached her, she said, we really need to make sure it's accessible. So that's when we redesigned the bench so that it would comply with the accessibility bylaw requirements.
Fabulous. Thank you.
It is wonderful.
I was just,
Go for it. No.
I was just wondering what the location of the benches is or will be, and if it's possible to like send us over a diagram or a map of like the future benches and the two that are being installed.
Okay, the two that have been confirmed to date are in front of the Legion, which has got a beautiful tree, and we are hoping to put it right under that tree, which in the summertime will be great because it'll be a place for you to sit in the shade. And the other place is in front of the chocolate shop, which is right beside the Nova Scotia Bank. There's a little bit of grass there, which is, and they are wanting a bench. They were wanting a bench and were only too happy when we came to discuss it with them. So it'll be fairly close to the museum benches, which will be a really great way for people to then see on the back that it's a heritage museum bench, and they will be able to possibly go to the museum as well as sit in the center of Wellington on this very colorful painted bench.
That's lovely. What a positive project. That's really nice. A way to enjoy, hoofing it. Get out of our cars and make it possible for some people to walk to the store or walk to the coffee shop instead of hop in their car. If they have mobility issues, it's a particular boon. So, and thank you to Irene's comment. What a great comment. It really is so refreshing. And are there thoughts about public lands at any point in the future?
Kate, we don't know yet because we have been really busy with getting the project up and going and getting the artists and all of that sort of thing. So we want to install the first two in 2024 in the spring. We'll have a reception and just to thank everybody at that stage. And we're not sure of the next locations. They probably will be on private property only because we want to have one going towards the beach and another one on the other side of the road going towards Wellington on the lake.
Right.
So
the spacing.
Yeah. And so
good.
It will not be on municipal property, but we didn't want not to come to you to tell you what we were doing. We wanted to make sure you knew what we were doing and that the bench was accessible to everybody.
It's terrific. Thank you. And what a great way to start the meeting on a positive note. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the work you're doing. That's really wonderful.
We will be back. We're going to do banners and murals and a few other things.
Terrific. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Nice way to start the night, eh? So can I get someone to move that the deputation by the Wellington Community Association regarding the public bench initiative be received? Thank you. Who's got their hand up? Hi, Ivan. Thank you. And Irene seconding. Thanks so much. All in favor? All good. And that passes. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
I don't think we have comments registered for tonight, as I'm pretty sure that's, are there any comments joining us from Zoom that I don't know about, Jen? Good night. Great, thank you. So we'll move on to items. Item 8.1, the committee's discussion on item 8 of the goals and purposes section of the Accessibility Advisory Committee's terms of reference. Can I get someone to put that on the floor? Any volunteers? Thanks, Roy. Councillor Pennell, in for the moving. Sarah, can I just point at you? Sarah will second. Thank you. So, so this discussion came out, I believe, of a prior discussion at a prior meeting that I was not at, or not fully at. I had to step out for some time. And I'm just wondering if Irene could provide some guidance from where she's sitting on we've got a series of discussion questions. What actions can the committee take in support of social inclusion poverty? It looks to me like people are sort of trying to define what the clause in our terms of reference that directs us to consider social inclusion, poverty, and community wellness, that we need to look to the committee to understand what that could mean and work with and just sort of bring everyone together to see if we're on the same page about what that means, or what that or what considerations are involved in sort of ironing out that mutual understanding. Is that correct, Irene? Can you put your mic on?
There we go. So how's that?
Perfect.
So I think that what you put it very succinctly. I think that's exactly what we're doing. And the discussion paper that was, not paper, but the paper that was attached on the agenda, our Vice Chair Scott Wallace attempted to put some definitions to social inclusion, poverty, and wellness, and then he put 4 questions, but really the first 3, like, do these definitions that he suggested, how do they resonate with the committee? Where can we, as an accessibility committee, where can we contribute to those definitions while working within our mandate? And what work is currently being done given inclusion, poverty, and community wellness. So I think the thought was, I know that Sarah has suggested it at our last meeting, that'd be really useful if the committee had a chance to talk about what each of us thinks is meant by social inclusion, poverty, and wellness. And you know, in terms of accessibility, what does that mean?
Okay.
And of course, our wonderful clerk gave us some context, some history about how we've ended up with being able to work on this notion of social inclusion, poverty, and wellness. Some have described it to me as really it's a lens through which you analyze everything that the committee's doing. Have we taken into account social inclusion, poverty, and wellness? Others believe that, you know, maybe there are some specific actions that we should be developing to make sure that we, from an accessibility perspective, make sure there is social inclusion, poverty, and wellness.
So perhaps we can go around the room and check and see if people have thoughts on these matters. Does that seem like a good way to proceed? And I'm going to check with, she's not the chair tonight, but the fearless chair of our committee, if that seems like a great idea, just to get the conversation started, just to once go around and see if we've got people who would like to sort of share their thoughts at this time. So, and I would start with Sarah, to my left, Sarah Moffat, if that's okay.
Sure, because I was part of that meeting that you spoke to with Irene and Scott and Jen. And before we get into the more specific questions that Scott laid out, I thought it'd be helpful to just have a really general discussion to get a baseline of where all the individuals on the committee kind of see themselves in terms of what their understanding is related to that item in the terms of reference. So speaking for myself, obviously my background is within social services, so when that item was added to the terms of reference, that was really appealing to me because that's something that I work with day to day. So I see this more, as Irene said, more of using that lens when we're making recommendations or having discussions. It is such a broad thing to capture, right? So I think just going around the room and getting different people's opinions, because what I think might be falling within the accessibility committee, others might think is not within our scope whatsoever. So first understanding what everyone feels should be within our role and then kind of going from there. But yeah, as I was saying, I think it would be helpful to see if there's any gaps in knowledge within the room, see if there's any training that would need to take place in order for us to really be effective in calling out social inequity and making those types of recommendations. And I also noted that I think our committee's already doing these things. So when I reviewed the comments for the Base 31 application, I noted that we're speaking to affordability issues.
Yeah.
Is that accessibility? Not traditionally. So I think that we're already kind of coming from that lens. Also, when Lisa Lindsay was in here talking about the Parks Master Plan, we were asking about distribution of resources and how is that going to be equitable. So I think a lot of this is we're already doing it, even if it's not a specific task on our action plan. But I understand the need to get some more clarity around that. And I don't know if this is a good time to bring it up, but I also am aware that there's a poverty roundtable that started recently. And I think that if it's in our terms of reference to speak to social inclusion and poverty reduction, I think a member of our committee should be at that roundtable. And I see in their meeting minutes that they're seeking someone out from our committee as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be a really good place to start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Sarah. That's an excellent point. It's not the community roundtable just yet. Poverty roundtable. It's part of the community safety and well-being plan.
Oh, okay.
So out of that
Right.
committee,
Will be a poverty work team.
yeah, poverty roundtable. But they're also seeking a member from the committee to serve on the
Great.
community safety well-being plan.
Huh.
So that will be coming
But that is
forward in
separate.
January.
That will be separate.
Yes.
Okay. Exciting. So, Carol, okay. Carolyn, would you have any thoughts that you would like to share at this time? No pressure.
Yeah, yeah, just further to what Sarah was saying, I think, yeah, to a certain extent, I think we are already kind of looking through site plans and other things through these lenses, which is really fantastic. I think just formalizing it in terms of references and in other ways would be like the kind of best way to move forward, and then we can officially kind of look at everything through that lens as we move forward.
Ivan or Irene, either of you have some thoughts to share?
Well,
Irene, do you want to go?
Go first, Ivan, or do you want me to go first?
Oh, you can go first. I'll just mute again.
Okay. I guess I took a different perspective. I was kind of looking at these definitions that Scott came up with and trying to figure out what does that mean to me in terms of accessibility. So if I looked at social inclusion, a concept in which every person in Canada has equal access to resources and opportunities. One of the things that I think is really critical that the county could do, and I think is doing it to a good extent, is really that support for our public services and our nonprofit sector. because I think that what they do, our public services and nonprofit services, really mean that people have equal access to services, and then that lens through which you look to see everything that we're doing from an accessibility, and do people have that. The other thing was I was thinking about poverty and the sort of income question, and it's led me to be reminded, how much do we know about in our county? What is the number of people that would say they have a disability? What kinds of disabilities, and what kinds of accessibility problems have they had in Prince Edward County? And I think what we learned from our friend from the foundation, the community foundation, when she came to speak with us about vital signs, one of the questions was about the research that's available. And there doesn't seem to be sort of a hard research for us on, in Prince Edward County, who are people with disabilities, what are they, and how many are they? And I think we have talked about in our action plan about saying, how do you figure out from them whether or not they're running into barriers in our community? So I think there are some sort of projects that are on our action plan, like that whole idea of the research, the idea of, are people have they got a way to complain to us that they run up against not having something that's accessible? I think the support for public services and not-for-profits in the county is a critical way to make sure that people are included. And I think the last thing, which is something that I think is really critical in our action plan, which we're going to talk about later tonight, hopefully, is the conditions of our lands and buildings run and owned by Prince Edward County, and to what extent are they accessible? Because of our own county, the things that our county council can make decisions about and impact, if they're not getting those things done, then how can we expect to say that there's social inclusion or wellness? Sorry to ramble on.
No, many thoughts. You've been
thought.
thinking about this a long time. So, so Ivan, would you have any thoughts you'd like to share at this time?
One of the things I've run into is different handicap groups. What they need are interfere with other handicap groups' need. My mom was blind and I have trouble walking. And this means that ramps affect both groups. For the blind people, they can't see them, and there's no edge to the sidewalk for them, so they can't tell if they're going out on the road or not. Whereas for me, I need the ramp to get up and down. And my concern there is around the painting, around the ramps, because if without the paint, I can't see where the ramps are.
Okay.
And some of the blind can see a little bit, and the paint that is used is visible to them. It's also good for the able-bodied people, so they can see the ramp, so they don't twist an ankle.
So it sort of ties in with what Irene was saying, which is we don't really know specifically what all the needs are in the community, and looking for a way to find that information and get information from actual real users who can give us those detailed comments that will help us kind of move forward as a community. Is that sort of what I'm hearing?
Well, I'm adding to what she's saying. Like, we can talk to different groups, but we also need to understand how one group's needs could interfere with another group's needs.
Yeah.
For an umbrella type concept.
Yeah, something to keep in mind. That's important. Yeah.
Because it's going to happen with other different groups in that, like people who can't hear and such things.
Yeah.
Also, I see you have a spot here for the LGBTs, but I don't see anything in there about religious groups. And for them to be included. And that's getting to be a big issue in politics today.
Well,
Also, I don't see a clear definition of the LGBT groups, because they got a plus sign, it means it's open-ended. And I know back in the 70s,
well, I mean, we're not gonna create definitions, like,
Well,
we're
I
not
think
gonna
we-
be able to,
well, if we don't create definitions, then you're going to be allowing people to have horses for the boyfriends and girlfriends, and the age of consent
so,
dropped to age 6.
but that, I think we've gotten way too far off the topic, and let's kind of stick with the topic at hand. Yeah,
I'm worried
Well, I
this is
think
the
there is a danger.
opposite of social inclusion.
we're kind of moving away from inclusion into exclusion. So
Yep.
let's kind of try to stick with our
Okay.
goal tonight, which is to talk about what social inclusion.
Okay, how about religious inclusion?
Well, except there's no, that's not really a group that's being currently excluded. So we're going to stick with groups that we know are struggling with inclusion as we sort of discuss how we're defining this. So I'm going to go over to
That's a
Councillor
bit of
Pennell.
I see that as being a little bit prejudiced.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. The gentleman was talking about, knowing where you are and that. The one thing I can say, as the county goes ahead now with new sidewalks and that, you'll see they're not only brightly colored, but they're made with bumps within it so that you do know. And something down the road that you might look at, maybe a main center spot in the downtown area, is going to what they have in Belleville, which is a different sound, so you know what the lights are if you're have some eyesight problems, and I think that's something we could look at. But right now we're coming a long ways forward very quickly, and I think there's going to have to be, we're going to have to separate the wheat from the straw, an old farmer's tale. But having said that, I think as we move ahead, as we get this input in, we can improve on all of these things.
So can I just ask, the new sidewalk that got rebuilt in Consecon, does that have, I haven't been up to look yet.
Yeah,
does that have that good textural separation?
It has like a raised
Great.
ball type of deal.
That's
So
great.
you know when you're walking. And
Yeah. So it's nice to hear that that's becoming part of our standard
I think it's
municipality.
the standard right now, I believe, in the county.
Well,
So
very good.
That's one
to hear.
area that I think they're kind of leading on that.
I've not seen the actual standards applied, so that would be very interesting to actually see what those engineering standards are for accessibility. So that's something to think about. So now, what about your thoughts? We haven't heard from you yet. What about your thoughts about that clause in the terms of reference regarding, that we're talking about now, regarding social inclusion, poverty, and wellness?
I believe that irregardless what we put into this, it's that starting point. There may be items that 6 months down the road we say, oh, we didn't really need that. There may be other items in there that we need to enhance that. And I just like the idea to get a clear start and then go from there.
Thanks. So I'd like to see, Scott was able to join the meeting. He had a conflict, but here he is. Well, that's wonderful. Scott, can we sort of hear just briefly your thoughts on what this discussion could do for us tonight?
I'd love to, and apologies everyone for being late.
Don't
What
apologize.
agenda
We're
item-
grateful you're here.
What agenda item were we actually talking about right now?
Sorry, we're on the first item for consideration. I think I have to scroll back up. I think it's item 8.1.
Okay. And just for my clarity, what actually was the question?
The question, well, we're just doing a quick, initial round about what the line in the terms of reference regarding social inclusion, poverty, and wellness means to different members, so that we can have sort of a jumping off to look to create some mutual understanding of some sort.
Okay, so we are debating the definitions to a degree. I was hoping that we wouldn't, but say, Libby.
No, I think we're just sharing thoughts. There's been no debate.
Okay. So clearly it's a complex concept, and everybody has different views and opinions about what inclusion means. For those of us that identify to equity deserving communities, we have our own lived experiences and contexts. So that impacts how we view things and how we are viewed by others. So it's not, the social inclusion concept is not strictly what people feel about us, it's how we internalize those things as well. So it can't be one way. It can't be the committee enforcing or applying or interpreting things across a group of people, because even within the LGBTQ2 plus community, there are varying degrees of not understanding, but sentiment, comprehension, feelings, etc. So you can't use a wide paintbrush across all of the equity deserving groups. You need to be cautious about what we're doing around social inclusion, how we're defining it.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Very helpful. So, from my perspective as a counselor, when we received this terms of reference for approval, I was very happy to see this term because it, this piece of this clause, and it was meaningful to me because there was no policy place in the county where people were specifically tasked with ensuring that our projects, our policies, our procedures had some equity lens on them of one sort or another. And it was important to me that that could be done, especially in regards to poverty. So, or to ensure that that our resources are distributed with some effort to make it equitable. So, and I'm going to use an example, as we did a rate study for our water and wastewater rates payers, there was no committee that was looking at the plans that were moving forward, which were going to have an impact on people's water bills, that were not, there was no committee looking at it with a lens that said, this is going to hurt some households quite a lot. Most households might be able to carry it. However, there are some that are going to have their water shut off and there's going to be no way to get it back on. So we were able to, at that time, through, there was one person advocating for it, only one, and it's much better to have a committee's eyes upon it. But it was just me, so just one person. So it took me a full year to get any progress. And then our wonderful staff got involved and created a really great relief program. So it's not perfect, it's not ideal, but it's excellent and is always evolving. But having eyes upon it that are looking with a critical eye and looking with an inclusive eye is really important to me. So I was really happy to see that there would be a home for policies to have that sort of gaze. So that's how I initially read that line. That doesn't mean that that's where that line stops. I also kind of thought EDI, yay, we'll get there. That's, from my perspective as a counselor, that's why I was so grateful to see that line appear. I don't where would people like to go with this conversation next? So, Catalina, just pipe up. Go for it. You have the floor.
Through the chair, are there any outcomes that the committee members are looking for? Should we, is there any action items from this? Like, are we keeping that clause? Should we add the definitions perhaps?
I
not to the terms of reference.
I'm perhaps more comfortable leaving it open, and I definitely would not support removing that clause. It's very important to me, and I think, like Sarah said, we're already seeing it was really wonderful in our first few meetings to hear committee members just naturally gravitate to an expanded I, and I think it's a wonderful group to do that. Yes.
I truly think we're moving in the right direction, but I'm always a little leery as we move ahead, and I believe in the KISS method, which I believe everybody else does. I think we have to be cautious on making things a little too difficult for people and right within us on the council table. And I would sooner start out a little slower. We can expand on all these things, but you try and do it all now, I think you can not succeed. Oh, that's only my own opinion. I don't speak for anyone.
Thanks, Roy. Anyone else? Oh, Scott's got his hand up.
Thank you, Kate. So the only other point that I'd like to make, so the earlier point about not using broad brush strokes to apply to people within an equity deserving group specifically or generally across populations is dangerous. The other question or comment that I've always had, and this goes back to when I and everyone else joined this committee, is our mandate is accessibility as it relates to persons with disabilities. So how far or how contracted do we stay within that definition? So are we going social inclusion for all equity deserving groups, or are we staying within our mandate requirements, which are persons with disabilities? Because that will have a significant impact on where we go forward with this.
So no, that's our statutory requirement, but there's nothing that prevents us from expanding our, which has happened. We have a slightly expanded terms of reference that moves beyond the requirements of the AODA compliance, and there's nothing to prevent. I mean, we could even this if council chose to have tasked this committee through the terms of reference with food security, for example, directly, we could have expanded to do that. So I don't know that we need to narrow it to meeting the goals of the Act alone. We have to do that work. We're mandated to do that work by the province, but not necessarily limited. So, but your point, I'm trying to think about what you were talking about regarding ensuring we understand. I think it's sort of clear in this meeting why we need to maybe sort of consider what you were saying about like equity. Yeah, like how that maybe do need to qualify that in some way. Because, and I think we've sort of, I think there's a clear need to do that. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. Scott.
I just have another comment question, and I apologize because I'm just playing catch up. So no surprise, social inclusion, not my specialty, but it is a concept. It's a complex concept. It's broadly defined. So we really need to nail down at some point in time what we mean by social inclusion as it relates to the mandate of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. And the reason I raise that is that somewhere in this agenda, we talk in the next thing about Community Safety and Wellbeing Working Group. Someone will have to, at some point, explain to that working group and our committee, where are the overlaps? Where do each of those groups complement each other? And where are their gaps? So we're treading down a path, which is important. Like, I'm not saying we ignore social inclusion, poverty, or wellness. And I agree with you 100%, Kate, that it needs to be left in the TOR.
Okay.
But we need to figure out what this means for the committee and how this definition or parameters, whatever we call it, is going to impact the other work that is coming down the pipe. Because you will potentially then have the, whatever this other working group is called, Community Safety and Wellbeing Working Group, working on the same or similar things that we are. And that just doesn't make sense. So that's my final point.
So would you want to include, for example, the schedule of definitions as a schedule at the bottom of the terms of reference? Or would you like, I'm just trying to think about what sort of, yeah, of course. Oh, please jump in, people, if you have thoughts. We can have a discussion.
So Scott, I said my piece before you joined, so I'm just going to reiterate it for you, because my understanding is that we'll just take that lens when we're evaluating planning documents that come across, deputations that are yeah. So I don't foresee it being very strict with definitions and what groups we're targeting and what groups we aren't. It's more so when we're faced with what we see as inequities or methods that we could address some of these issues in the terms of reference, that's when we should use those opportunities. I just think that we're taking it, yes, we're overcomplicating it. I think we have a really good start. And as I said, again, before you joined, we're doing this already. So with the base 31 comments from the committee, we talk about affordability. So that's beyond the scope of AODA. When the Parks Master Plan was presented, we asked about equity of resources. That's not accessibility. So we're already doing these pieces.
Roy.
Agreed. No, thank you for that context piece. And I am not saying that we need definitions, but we should at some point in time have parameters in terms of what does it mean for us, because there's going to be overlap. I guarantee you that in the next year with this other working group, there's going to be overlap.
And we're going to be on that working group.
Yeah.
So overlap, I don't see that, and anyone can jump in, but I don't see that as an issue, to be honest.
So Roy has his hand up.
I've been listening to the whole conversation, and I'm kind of inclined to agree with this gentleman. Our mandate is accessibility. When you throw all this other in, it's still accessibility. I see them as being able to enhance us, but I don't see us as getting involved in their work. I think it's a very distinct difference. And I feel, you know, I hear the talk and I know where it's going, but that is our mandate. That is what council made our mandate, I believe, was accessibility. And the province has made accessibility a mandate. And I think
so you're thinking keep it simple.
Going outside of the circle.
So you think keep it simple also?
I think keep it simple.
Okay.
Sorry, do you realize that addressing social inclusion and poverty is part of the terms of reference of this committee?
I think if we're dealing with accessibility, that's what we're to do. And it affects all people. And I when we start saying, well, you know, if somebody can't afford something, it affects every single person, no matter what your job is, no matter the color of your skin, no matter what. Accessibility is accessibility for all.
Thank you.
So are you good with that terms of reference?
Pardon?
I think that's a yeah.
Okay.
That you support this terms of reference as is.
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, thank
you. Gotcha.
So if anyone wants to, I'm sensing a lot of comfort with it as written. If anyone wants to propose something different, great. Great, good. So, let's see, we put it on the floor already. We did not? I thought we did. Oh. Well, do you have it? You don't have anyone written in? Oh, I do. Yes, they're very good. That's what I thought. Good. So thank you for confirming that. So can we receive the conversation? So our motion is that the committee discussion be received. So that's all that we're doing at the moment. Is everyone comfortable with that? We'll move ahead. Okay. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. Can I get someone to put, oh, we won't put that on the floor quite yet. We have to actually discuss this first so that we've got a name. So next we've got item 8.2, Community Safety and Wellbeing Working Group Appointment. And this is the perfect item to have following that conversation because Sarah brought it up. We're looking at sending someone to join that Community Safety and Wellbeing Working Group. And that working group works very closely with the municipality and very, very closely with the Police Services Board. And all of so many different agencies and service providers in our community. So whoever is appointed would be our liaison and our voice at that table, and would also be able to bring information back to us to ensure exactly what Scott was talking about, that we're not duplicating effort, but that we're working in concert. So if anyone who's reviewed the terms of reference and is interested in this work group, please step forward. It's a good one, folks. Councillor Pennell, you got your hand. You're nominating someone?
Yeah, I forgot her name.
Sarah. Sarah Moffat.
Yeah, I'd nominate Sarah Moffat to this position.
She'd be an excellent choice. Are you able?
Sorry, to those, I turned my speaker on. Yes, I would like to accept, because I think it just goes nicely with the other work I'm doing.
Scott, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just had a question. So I'm delighted that Sarah is going to be the representative for that working group, but I couldn't help but notice that there are, and I don't know what the mechanism is, up to 10 additional persons who represent organizations that support equity seeking in Prince Edward County, including BIPOC, LGBTQ, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know if Catalina or someone else can answer this question. If someone like myself who also wanted to contribute because of the EDI work, which is coming, and because of the interconnectedness between those topics and this working group, is how does one join outside of the committee? Because you've already nominated Sarah, and that's great.
So, go ahead.
I can just follow up outside. It's fine.
Yeah, through the chair, Scott, that would be fantastic. I'll connect you with Julianne, who is the staff liaison, the lead for this Community Safety Wellbeing Working Group, and connect you with her.
That's great, thanks. And that would be amazing to have a couple of members, that even one that's not there specifically representing the group. Having many avenues and many great people working on something wonderful, it just gets better. So I don't see any other people nominating anyone else, and I think I would take that as a vote of confidence. And Sarah, I don't think we have to vote because that's but I will put the call out because our procedural bylaw tells us to make 3 calls. Any other nominees like to step forward, or would anyone like to nominate someone else? No? I don't see any hands going up, and I sure feel confident that Sarah's the right person to have there. So that would be wonderful. I'm glad you're willing. Can someone move this motion that Sarah Moffat be appointed to the Community Safety and Wellbeing Work Group pursuant to the terms of reference? So Carolyn and Councillor Pennell, thank you very much. All in favor? That's great. You're a busy person.
Yeah, no more working groups.
No more working groups, that's it. So item 8.3, appointment of a committee member to the Delhi Park Community Connections Task Team. Does anyone have, Councillor Pennell?
Does that decision have to be made tonight? I suspect budget time, the first week in December, I personally would like to get through that to see where we're ending up, because we've had a lot of emails and questions on the whole thing, and I'm not convinced at this particular point whether we're heading in the right direction. And for the sake of
on Delhi Park?
yeah.
Oh, on Delhi Park. So that's the paths that I think staff plan to be funded by grant. Okay. So that's not going to have much of a budget impact. So I think if we're thinking Picton, yes, that's a discussion, that budget time. But this one is just to ensure that the pathway network that runs through Delhi Park is able to connect the parts of the community that are currently separated by that long, narrow park. I mean, that's how it was born, but it might grow beyond that. And just, I have not been appointed by council yet, but wearing my council hat and my Picton representative hat, I believe I will be a strong contender to already sit on that work group. If people are feeling a little at capacity, I can wear two hats, but it would be wonderful if anyone wants to join. It would be great to have an accessibility team member there as well. So, and like I said, I mean, nothing's finalized at council anyway. So if anyone would like to nominate anyone, or if anyone would like to nominate themselves, Councillor Pennell.
I would nominate you for the
I don't know how that works. I think I would look to see if there's a committee member. I'm looking to be on that committee anyway, on that working group.
I would, excuse me, just to follow up, I would hope someone else would also join in that was willing to do that.
If someone's got capacity, I think I'm looking around the table and seeing a lot of busy people. However, it'll be fun and ad hoc and short-lived. So I don't see hands shooting up. So you know what, Roy? I think I will make a commitment to do exactly that. And if any member wants to come forward in the future, I don't know, do we need to appoint me, Catalina? Because I could, I'm going to be there anyway, maybe. Sure. I mean,
just appoint her as go-between for council. I don't know.
What do you think?
Through the chair, the terms of reference currently have one Picton councillor, so you could technically wear both hats as an accessibility lens on this working group, also your council lens, and then Councillor St. Jean would automatically be appointed at council on November 28th.
We could do it that way.
And then it wouldn't be, I mean, would still, I would.
And then we don't have to bother changing
amending
the terms of reference.
Sure.
Okay, so Roy, I would accept that appointment, or that nomination, if the group is happy with that. I don't see anybody. No. Anyone opposed? Okay, so can I get a mover to put that on the floor? Thank you, Sarah. And can I get a seconder? Thank you, Irene. That Kate McNaughton be appointed as the Delhi Park Community Connections Task Team pursuant to the terms of reference. And that really probably saves the clerks quite a bit of work. All in favor? Okay, it's me. Thanks. Next we're going to go to item 8.4, that the committee recommends council approve the Accessibility Advisory Committee Site Plan and Planning Applications Working Group Terms of Reference, and that 2 people be appointed. So let's get the discussion going. If anyone would like to, if everyone's familiar with the terms of reference, would they like to nominate themselves or someone else to be on that group? And I certainly have a potential nominee in mind. Okay, no one's putting up their hands, so I'm going to put Irene on the spot. Irene, I would absolutely, with great confidence, nominate you to that work group if you're willing. And can you turn your mic on? Thanks. Am I allowed to nominate from the chair?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kate. I would love to be on that committee.
Great.
If people would let me do that, that would be great.
Anyone else? Any other nominations to come forward for the Site Plan and Planning Applications Working Group pursuant to the terms of reference? No one? Once again, we're working with a group at capacity. I would ask Irene, I'm beyond my limit as far as capacity goes, but I would be happy to be a support for you, even though I would certainly put my name forward, but I would not be very productive until a couple of my other ongoing work groups have come to their conclusion. So if there's no one else, I would certainly be a support, but it might be a bit part rather than a leading role for a while, if people are comfortable with that, just to not leave Irene hanging out there alone.
Kate, if I could just add to encourage, and it'd be great if you would do that, and if another committee would. I think we're tightening up the process a little bit with these site plans. They're so important, and I think what would do if we had 2 or 3 people doing a first run look at them.
It would be,
because we all see different things,
and we've had such good comments.
Let the committee, go back and forth amongst each other on other things that they're seeing, so that the three people then just have to kind of put it together and get it off to planning. And I'm happy to kind of do the footwork to that. So if you were there, that'd be great. But
yes,
we've got
okay,
up to
certainly.
3, I think, in the terms of reference. So someone else who likes reading site plans, I think it'd be really helpful.
You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I am not nominating myself because I have other work that's coming down the pipe that's not AAC related. Yeah. So Irene, just a point of clarification. So what Kate is referring to in terms of that support would be 125% delighted to continue supporting you with the site plans. The way that, as far as I know, Kate and I don't know who else, have been doing for the last few months, if that's agreeable to you.
I think it's worked really well. So, yeah, Scott, if you're willing to do that. And then I think the commitment to the rest of the committee is that if the 3 of us are spotting something, putting sort of a first blush look at it, and then share that with the whole committee, so that we kind of have a bit of a go around between each other, just through emails. Here's sort of what the 3 of us have seen, and what do others think, and then I'm happy to kind of pull the final document together for planning.
Is that comfortable for people in this room? I mean, virtual and literal room? Okay, so a couple of heads nodding. So then Scott, would you want us to not formally appoint you? I think we could formally appoint you and you could act within that capacity. I would leave it up to you if that's just too much real estate on the fire, sort of. If you get my weirdly mixed metaphor.
I'd like to nominate Scott Wallace
Okay.
for the Planning Reference Group and Kate McNaughton.
Okay. So, Irene, I'm going to ask you to move that entire motion, and we'll include those 3 names.
Okay, so I move that Scott Wallace, Kate McNaughton, and Irene Harris be appointed to the Accessibility Advisory Committee Site Plan and Planning Applications Working Group pursuant to the terms of reference.
Thank you. And that the committee recommends that council approve this site plan and planning applications working group terms of reference. So,
all right.
Yeah. Which, thank you for the preparation of that document, both of you. I presume that was a grand team effort, right? It started with Scott. So thank you, all of you. And all in favor? There we go. Okay. That carries. So item 8.4, comments on the planning file that we've already referenced. So we've had comments that have been consolidated, and has everyone had a chance to read it? Would someone like to put this item on the floor?
I would move it.
Thanks very much, Irene. Oops, I've just lost it. Where am I? There we are. So, and because you did so much work on it, I think it's fit that you are the one to move it. A seconder, please. Okay, any discussion? Oh, Scott, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Thanks, and thanks for the work that was done on that. Excellent job. Okay, so 8.6, International Day of Persons with Disabilities. So I would ask specifically Scott if he would like to put this on the floor, because he's the one who's done, I believe, all the legwork on this with some supporting cast members, our chair, our usual chair, and the clerks. Would you like to put this on the floor, Scott?
I'm not really sure what that means, to put it on the floor.
Would you like to move it?
Oh, sure.
Great. And thank you for all the work that you've done on it. Would anyone like to second it? Okay, Ivan? So any comments? Yes, go for it, Scott.
So I would just like to provide a context piece for everybody.
Great.
So you will recall that at the end of October, I had asked, what are we doing as an organization, and the organization being the municipality, for December 3rd, which, as you read in the proclamation, is an internationally celebrated day. So on our committee, we do things that are reactive in the context of here's a site plan, review it, provide feedback. But I personally would like to see in the coming 3 years of our term that we do things that are more proactive. So we still need to do the reactive stuff, like review the site plan, provide feedback, but there are many opportunities. There are brilliant people on this committee, lots of great ideas. So this was just one idea to create awareness amongst our community. So the municipality, employees of Prince Edward County, staff and residents of this key day. You know, next year, perhaps there's more things that we could do to support this particular day, but it's just the starting point, if you will, of thinking that we should be doing in terms of seeking other opportunities to be proactive and supportive of persons with disabilities in and about our community. And this is just one simple way of doing that. So thank you to Catalina, thank you to the Mayor's Office, and thank you to my cherished colleague Irene, who helped me with some editing. And that's where I will leave it.
So, and that might be something that you want to bring up again when we get to the action plan discussion, because that might be something that we want to sort of be envisioning as we go forward in the next calendar year to start understanding what that could mean. So that could be a great place to sort of like look at how we, you know, when we discuss our work plan, how we sort of think about that and future goals. And it sort of ties in with, you know, some of the comments that Ivan and Irene brought up, which were like, how do we identify the needs that people do have? So that might be another good thing for those work plan discussions. So, and thank you for, like, again, thank you for all the work that you did on that. Would anyone on the committee like to ask a question of Scott, or does anyone have any final comment, or shall we just take the vote? Yeah, go for it, Councillor Pennell.
I would hope that this celebration next year, that we would have enough accomplishments, perhaps would be a wonderful time to show our accomplishment for the year and heading forward. I think that's what we need.
Mm-hmm. And potential for a great educational device too, yeah, to work towards that. So thank you. All in favor? Great, that definitely carries. Thanks very much. So next, we've got a discussion of accessible parking at local parks, item 8.7. So would someone like to put that on the floor? Councillor Pennell, great. Yes. And a seconder? Thank you, Carolyn. Do you want to, so this is an interesting one. So we've made comments regarding the Parks Master Plan, sort of some general comments. I'm wondering, I'm wondering if, would anyone like to sort of begin the conversation on this one? So, Councillor Pennell. Oh, thank you.
Oh, I'm not hearing.
Prior to everything we've been through over the last few years, seniors, and a lot of them disabled as well, are starting to get out and enjoy their community again. I think it's wonderful, but in particular, I run into one bus driver and he said, you know, I can't park at one end of a park and expect the people to walk back and forth and that. He said it would be so nice if I could park them near the water that they could enjoy close hand what's going on. I couldn't agree more. And I got to think about it, it was just one park, but then I started looking at the Rotary Beach in Wellington. There's really nothing there that says if a bus load comes in, and I'm not talking a big bus, I'm talking the mini bus, there's really no spot for them to park. And what I would like to see is a parking bus or a parking spot big enough to hold one of the small accessible buses that they could come in and feel part of everything that's going on. And I'm not convinced they do now. And I noticed in particular in Ameliasburg, there's so many people that are in excellent shape are trying to take every last little spot to park. And I'm thinking, why can it not be properly accessible to the people that truly need it? There's all kinds of parking in that part. Same way down at the Rotary Park, and I'm certain there's a lot of our other parks that have water access, and I'm thinking mainly of that they have a chance to enjoy it and not move a whole distance, and they are immobile for some of the people and just love the opportunity, get out the fresh air. These are the people that have brought us up through the year. I think we owe it to them.
Thank you, Roy. Irene, you had your hand up. Or did you?
Well, I just wanted to say that I agree with what Roy is saying. You know, I was just down a couple of weeks ago to the Northport Park, and we had a deputation here once, and they talked about, you know, building something down so that people could get to the water, and sort out the parking, and you know, they've now put in pavement, and you know, can I tell you, it's just wonderful. I could walk down to that beach and I couldn't before. So I think this is just something that is really critical for accessibility. If you can't, you know, use your parks, it's pretty bad. It's pretty rough.
It's nice to think of.
And I think that Roy's right, that if we can have parking at every park, we should be doing that. And maybe what's needed is an audit, as Roy's mentioning. You know, you see it works well in some parks, other park areas it's not. So I'm wondering if it would be appropriate to have a motion that we recommend to council that you know, in time for next spring, when people start to use the parks, that there be an assessment of which parks have accessible parking and which ones do not, and what it would take to get a spot put in those parks that don't have them.
There are a couple. Okay.
So
Great.
I would just wonder if that would be an appropriate motion.
There are a couple of ways, there are a couple of avenues that, I mean, one of which is Councillor Pennell can actually potentially talk to staff and maybe bring that forward directly at budget time to see if it, but even stronger, perhaps, we've got a parks master plan coming forward that might already have some inclusion that we don't know about yet. And I'd be interested to see if sort of that might be part of the information that we receive, and that might provide us a direct vehicle forward. Yes, Councillor Pennell.
I may be wrong, and I stand corrected. I believe that report is not coming through until the second quarter of 2024.
Is it second quarter now?
I believe so. Perhaps Kurt could help me
Yeah,
on that.
that would be, Catalina, can you fill us in?
Certainly, through the chair. I'm not aware of what the scope is of the Parks Master Plan. I'm not sure if they're looking at parking, but we could definitely share the comments provided tonight through the Accessibility Committee with Lisa to ensure that the consultant considers them. But I do agree with the chair, Irene, that there is an opportunity to conduct an audit of all of our parks and whether they have an accessible spot or they don't have an accessible spot, and then move forward on a path forward even through the multi-year accessibility progress report. We have a multi-year accessibility plan from 2022 to 2026, and within that there is a progress report created, which is going to council in January after discussing with the committee January 15th, bringing the draft report forward to the next committee meeting in 2024. But doing an audit, I'm very short-staffed, but I feel we did audits, accessibility audits for the election in all of our town halls. We could work with parking staff to do a similar approach at our parks and just to count if there are accessible spaces, and if there isn't, where would the best location be? Because our parking bylaw, Schedule J, has all accessible parking spaces. So
Okay,
that
so
bylaw includes where they are currently located.
Well, now one of the things that Councillor Pennell mentioned was spaces that could accommodate the transit bus. And that would be kind of the critical component, whether they were adequate.
Because just looking at Schedule J, I don't see any parks.
But I'm looking in particular, there's two, for the Rodman Lake Park, there's two accessible spots. They're at the old hall in front of it. Going down to the water, there's a parking lot that's there for people to park. They all tend to park down next to the water.
Yep.
And if they come in with a bus, it gets a little dicey sometimes. And all I'm saying, in particular, access to water means a lot to those people. And I hate to say, well, let's, get a study done on it. First thing you know, we'll be into 2025.
So, but however, what's the best way forward?
Weeks away.
Budget's a couple weeks away. I mean, you could potentially discuss that with staff right now. However, I think what Catalina is proposing might be along the lines of what, like, might give you a key to get started, which would be to ask council to direct staff to investigate the best approach for accessible parking for our recreational spaces in 2024.
So through the chair, I think if it's just particularly parks, that's feasible for myself or somebody from my team to do an audit.
No.
And with parking staff if they have availability. But to Councillor Pennell's point about budget and this coming after budget, every single budget there's sign funds. So in terms of creating accessible spaces, it's not that expensive. It's to get the signage, and there's already funds allocated for signage every year. But also it would be a report and a bylaw change to bylaw 75-2021.
Can I ask one quick question?
Sure.
Would it be appropriate, because I know in particular, driving down to the Rotary Park at Wellington, and no matter what, we would have to work closely because they kind of spend a lot of money in there and that. And would it be appropriate to perhaps have 2 or 3 members approach the Rotary and get their feels on it before we move ahead?
I mean, I don't...
Through the chair, we can definitely, once we conduct the audit, just to see what we have and what the possibilities are, we can explore funding mechanisms. There's always grants available, but in my understanding, the signage cost would be the biggest cost in doing this. The other is a report and a bylaw amendment.
So this sounds quite doable.
And painting. Thank you, Jen.
So, Councillor Pennell, would you like to go ahead with, or any other committee member, what we're hearing from our clerk is a potential pathway that might get us the information we need in a relatively expedient way, but it would still require, is it part of that's already part of your mandate in the clerk's office to be working on the accessibility plan, so you don't need a motion to go through council. You would need
I would just require a direct motion from the committee to say that staff, like that bylaw and clerk office staff, work together to conduct an audit on accessible parking spots in parks for now. And then the results can be brought forward in the multi-year accessibility plan. And I do want to put a little plug in. I did add extra funds in the clerk's office budget specifically for accessibility.
Excellent. Okay.
So there will be some money towards those projects that come up throughout the year.
Knock on wood. Okay, so Jen, did you catch that wording? Pretty much. Yeah, can you read that back to us? So you can. And Roy, assuming you like this wording, would you like to move this?
I will move.
Great.
I'm certain.
Okay.
I'm prepared to move the motion. I'm certain it'll be written just as I would have said it.
Okay, let's hear it.
That the bylaw and clerk's office staff work together to do an audit of accessibility parking spots at public parks in the county.
Perfect.
And if Councillor Pennell is okay with that, if Caroline is okay, she seconded the original motion and we could just
Great.
put them together.
You good with that? All good.
Okay.
Okay, further discussion?
I just have a
yes.
question on that. Are we putting in a recommendation to council that we aim to have this ready, like a timing?
I
Is
think
it open-ended on the timing?
well, we could include, so, but Catalina, what sort of timing could we be looking at, not for inclusion on the report, but actual spaces defined at parks in Prince Edward? Like, would we be able to see this within the next 2 quarters, for example, like it's towards the end of?
Through the chair, yeah, we would try to complete it before tourism, so in the spring, once
Great.
the snow melts.
Okay.
The
So-
report will come forward January, end
Terrific.
of January. The draft report will come to the committee for review January 15th.
Okay, and then we'll go on to council.